The All-Stars of today are fun to watch and exciting to root for, but will their prices withstand the test of time? I'm comparing some of the best players from today to some of the best from the 90s to see what might happen with their prices over time today in Data Dive. Hey everyone, welcome back to another Data Dive. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as T-Pott, back from paternity leave and back from the National. What an absolute whirlwind. That was 5 intense days, not a lot of sleep, a lot of interacting, and I really want to thank any of you watching this who shouted out across the show floor, hey T-Pott, or who stopped by our booth and said so many kind things. It was absolutely awesome interacting with so many of you. Frankly, surreal. This is not something I ever thought I would be doing, and I'm still getting used to having the opportunity to be known by people and have so many awesome interactions. So thank you for those of you who are at the National, and thank you for those of you who watch this channel regularly. It really means a lot to me. Today, I want to get into a topic that I've kind of touched on in episodes in the past, and that's the topic of what's going to happen to prices over time to specific groups of players. We talk a lot about how investing in the best players of an era, what I'm coining the GOATs, the greatest of their eras, that can be a good investment long term if they turn out to be the 1 or 2 or maybe 3 or 4 best players from that particular time frame. But what about the next tier down? What about the all-stars, the guys who maybe are all NBA or all MLB first team, that type of thing? What about those guys and gals over time? What happens to their prices? We can look to the past, and that's what I want to do, back to say the 90s, 20, 30 years removed, to see what happened to some of those players' prices up until today, to try to project and forecast what could be happening with today's players 20 to 30 years down the line. So before we do that, as always, this episode is brought to you by Market Movers. Now with over 810,000 cards in the database, fast tracking on our way to 1 million, and we'll be celebrating that big time, trust me. You can visit marketmoversapp.com. We have brand new pricing starting as low as $9.99 a month. We're starting to add TCG like Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, and other products to the database. Again, visit marketmoversapp.com and use promo code TRIAL for 7 days free. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the data. Okay, so I found a few examples, and this was some things that I actually shared on my own personal Instagram story about a month ago. I love doing polls, and if you like voting on polls and following that type of content, you can visit my page at Drummond Card Collector on Instagram and give me a follow. I was putting up some polls about who was better, which player was better. Some of them were players from the same era today. For example, I did one comparing John Wall and Kemba Walker, but I also really love comparing and asking people like who was better. In this example, Chris Mullen played for the Warriors back in the 90s, Dream Team, All-Star, All-NBA, Hall of Fame, or today, Klay Thompson, obviously also for the Warriors, very important player. Sometimes those comparisons stand out to me, and so I run those polls, and the results can be really interesting. One thing that I really like to do is to compare their statistics and show the statistics in a blind manner before showing the names to try to get a sense of who people think was better. So let's look at this. Chris Mullen and Klay Thompson. Again, I said Chris Mullen, Hall of Fame, 5-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA. Klay Thompson, 5-time All-Star, 4-time NBA champ, probably better than 4-time All-NBA, 2 times All-NBA, All-Rookie, and All-Defensive 1 year in 2018. If we stack up these stats in a blind manner, I ran this, you can see that player A here obviously has the better stats. Green is better than red, and so this player was better in every category. And in some of them, somewhat significantly, not blowing the doors off here, but a 19.6 player efficiency rating is better than 16.4. And so you kind of go down the line and you can see that this player A looks a little more well-rounded, looks like a better shooter. So who was player A and who was player B? Well, the results were kind of surprising. A few days later, or later that day rather, I ran the same poll and I just said, who's better, Chris Mullen or Klay Thompson? 71% voted Klay Thompson, 29% Chris Mullen. Some of that may be audience bias for who follows me and who voted in the poll on my page, although I do have a lot of 90s collectors that I know I follow and we mutually follow each other. But the poll, interesting, right? 93% based on the stats alone, which don't tell the whole picture. said that Chris Mullen was the better player versus 7% saying Klay Thompson. Then you flip it, 71% saying Klay is the better player to 29% Chris Mullen. So what does this tell us? I was comparing those stats through the same, period in their careers. So I think no matter what, even if you think one is better than the other, obviously Klay being a part of the Warriors dynasty, a huge, huge part of it. Even if you think one is better than the other, I think they're comparable for the eras. Klay with the titles and part of this legacy probably has a better chance to hold long-term value than Chris Mullen. And he still has a lot of career left. We don't know what's going to happen the rest of his career, and if they go on to win more championships, I think that legacy will solidify. But let's jump over and kind of see what's going on with specific transaction volume today between Klay Thompson and Chris Mullen. So in the last 90 days, what I've done here is there have been over 3,400 sales for Klay Thompson cards in the last 90 days on eBay. Chris Mullen, 1,900, so not quite half as many, a little more than half as many than Klay Thompson in the last 90 days. But then let's look at these dollar thresholds. More than $25, these are transactions more than $25. 2,400 out of the 3,400 Klay Thompson cards that sold on eBay were over $25, whereas Chris Mullen, only 658, about a third. What about over $200? Rather 650 results for Klay. So 650 out of his 3,400 sales were over $200. Chris Mullen just 85. And then jumping up over $1,000, we've got Klay Thompson at 119 cards in the last 90 days selling for over $1,000. So $119,000 at least transacting on big cards for Klay. Only 5 for Chris Mullen in the last 90 days. And the last piece of data that I think is really interesting to look at is, this is from GemRate. Visit gemrate.com for data like this, and you can go to the player tab to look up players and see what's going on. For PSA, total number of cards graded by PSA for Klay Thompson, 1,395. Total gems, 5,150, so that's how many PSA 10s in existence for those unique cards. Total grades, 10,805. So again, this is unique cards. This is the total cards sent in across all those unique cards. And you've got about a little under half of them gemming for Klay Thompson at PSA 10. That's actually, I think, pretty high in general, even for Ultra Modern. Now, number of cards for Chris Mullen, just 386. Total gems, 1,433. Total grades, 9,524 for a gem rate of just 15%. So we know, obviously, 90s cards, far fewer, PSA 10s in existence. I think a big, thing to note here is today the cards tend to be, I think, a lot cooler. There's some other things to unpack, and we'll get into that. But let's jump over and look at their charts for their key cards. And I think there's a few key cards we can look at, specifically, Chris Mullen being a part of that 1986 Fleer set, actually an 85 rookie, so he's coming into the 86, Fleer set with his rookie card like Jordan, not being from that year. Pop 108 on his PSA 10. Very, very, very iconic set. One of the most, if not the, one of the most iconic sets of all time, obviously, the 86 Fleer set. And Klay Thompson having his rookie card in the 2012 Prism set, another extremely iconic set. Maybe not quite as much as the 86 Fleer, some people might argue in favor of it, but we're kind of comparing apples to apples with that. But a much higher population at 833 for Klay. Then we've got his silver, which you obviously don't have any refractors back in the 80s, at Pop 26. So if we scroll down, what you can see in terms of pricing is that Klay's PSA 10 base Prism, $287. Mullen at $26.50 on that very low pop. You have a lot of set collectors for 86 Fleer, so that makes a lot of sense. And then you've got Klay all the way up here at $7,000 on his Prism Silver on a lower population. The big difference here is this is it for Chris Mullen in terms of rookie cards. Klay Thompson has a whole bunch of rookie cards. Klay Thompson has a whole bunch of, unique and interesting cards since then. So this just kind of makes me think, well, what's going to happen with Klay Thompson's prices over time? I imagine some of these key cards are the ones that would hold their value. I don't know about the others. There's only so much money that will be circulating, and going into Klay Thompson for the long term. So what will happen 20 to 30 years from now, if we were to go back to that chart, and I'll jump back to it, when Klay Thompson moves down here, and there's some new sharpshooter for the Warriors or another team that has, you know, eyes all over him, this is the type of churn that we see in general. When every new rookie class comes in, guys from 5, 6, 10 years ago, they fall off, even if they were some of the best players in the NBA. And we could come up with countless examples of that. So let's take a look at another example. You know, another very, very similar one. Shifting over to Mitch Richmond, the Rock. Mitch Richmond versus Bradley Beal, obviously a fan favorite today. Staying with Washington, and I just said, who's the better player, Mitch Richmond or Bradley Beal? 55-45 split. Again, I have a lot of 90s basketball followers on my page. I think if this went up on one of the big accounts of modern NBA fans, you'd probably have people voting for Bradley Beal. But let's look at their accolades. Mitch Richmond in the Hall of Fame. Is Bradley Beal going to make the Hall of Fame? I don't know yet. I wouldn't say as of today he would at all, but he could still do a lot in his career. Hard to know. 5 times All-NBA for Mitch Richmond. Only 1 time All-NBA so far for Bradley Beal. NBA champion in 2002 for Mitch Richmond. All-rookie, All-Star MVP, Rookie of the Year. A lot of accolades, a lot more for Mitch Richmond than for Beal to this point in his career. So again, comparing their stats for the same duration in their careers. So I've got Beal from 2013 to present. I've got Mitch Richmond from 89 to 98. These stats are so eerily similar. I mean, across the board, you go across the board. Minutes similar, field goals attempted per game similar, field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, everything is very, very close, like all the way down to the rebounds and assists within like decimal points of one another on every stat. Mitch Richmond having just the slight edge with 1 point per game better. And if we get into the advanced stats, similar story, almost identical player efficiency rating, true shooting percentage, literally 1,000th of a point difference, usage rates comparable, win shares up for Mitch Richmond. Sometimes that can have a lot more to do with, you know, the team and everything else being really close. So again, the point being here, very, very, very similar players, doing similar things. Transactions. Similar comparison here. 2,800 last 90 days for Beal, 944 for Mitch Richmond, 642 over $25 to 116, 56 to 12 on transactions over $200, and finally over $1,000. 5 sales for Bradley Beal, 0 for Mitch Richmond. 0 cards selling in the last 90 days for Mitch Richmond, and I can tell you, there's only a handful that may even cross that threshold for Mitch. You know, some of his most iconic, cards from the 90s, maybe his green PMG, a red PMG probably would cross $1,000, essential credentials, and a handful of others. So, there's not a lot in existence for Mitch Richmond that, collectors gravitate to that they're going to pay a huge premium for. But I think even if you look into the future, something for Bradley Beal, like a Logo Man card or something else, I don't know how much value that's going to hold in the long term once he kind of falls out of the collective consciousness and isn't in the league anymore, and there's new exciting players in the league. So here we have their prices. Again, I've pulled up the 2012 Prism, Beal also with his rookie card in that set, Pop 800, and then you've got Mitch Richmond's 1989 Fleer base card, one of his more iconic rookie cards in a PSA 10, Pop 237. So Pop 237 on this card, similar prices so far. $90 for the Mitch Richmond, lower population count. $95 most recently for Beal. He's still got a lot of career ahead of him, but similar prices there. But again, the difference being Beal has a whole bunch of rookie cards. So if you take the collective, let's call it market cap, the collective money that's invested in, that's pooled in, that's being stored equity, trapped equity into Beal cards today, there's way, way, way more into Bradley Beal than there is Mitch Richmond into his rookie cards. So we can jump over and take a look at another comparison. This is Beal's Silver Prism, Pop 26. This card selling for around $2,000 most recently. And then let's take Mitch Richmond's Topps Chrome Refractor from the 1996 set, just Pop 6. So we know how important of a set 96 Topps Chrome is, and the refractor is highly sought after by set collectors, especially in a PSA 10. That card sold last for $1,100. Similarly iconic cards, I would say here, except insofar as the fact that Richmond's card is not a rookie card, but Pop 6, a lot of people trying to collect that set and not a lot of PSA 10s to go around. So what does all of this mean? Let's kind of take like one final look here. Oh, I forgot to talk about the gem rates, but again, you can take a look at that information. Before I do this, quick shout out. A couple of Instagram accounts worth noting. I know of a couple Mitch Richman collectors, and I love looking at their pages. The first one being Buck and Tier, second being Don't Care, Go Cats. I've got their information up here. Go give them a follow and just check out all their really cool Mitch Richman cards. Love giving shout outs to awesome PC player collector accounts. So factors to consider here. Like I said, cards today are cooler in many cases. There's a lot of more unique cards in terms of some of the rare parallels, one-of-ones, logo men, autos, flawless, all this kind of stuff that we see, right? A lot more dynamic than, especially for Mullen and Mitch Richman, that turn of the 80s into the early 90s stuff. You know I love 90s inserts, all that stuff, the way it took off, started to really take off 95, 96 and onward. Doesn't mean those guys have a lot of those cards. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of the cards being cooler. That being said, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword today because there are just a lot more cards in general. We've done many episodes on that in the past, just the total number of cards in existence. We saw that in the pop count data from GemRate. So what does that mean? Total cards in existence. This is from Trading Card Database. Chris Mullen, 2008 total cards in existence. Klay Thompson with 4,233 cards in existence. Mitch Richman, 1,537 cards in existence. Bradley Beal, 5,189 cards in existence. I thought it was interesting too, just looking at like Klay and Beal to see who has more cards. Beal with almost 1,000 more cards than Klay Thompson. Not sure what that means other than that the manufacturers must think he sells a lot better. So the question here, again, can the collective market cap of all these cards be sustained as players fall out of favor, as they fall out of the collective consciousness and they're replaced with the next crop up? It's really hard to say, but my inclination is to say no. Now, let me put a bow on all of this and just clarify something. We see it in the comments on almost every video we do on this channel and SCI. Collect what you love and you won't have this problem. Collect what you love. No, that's totally fine. I get ridiculed all the time for having a crazy Andre Drummond collection. People say, why would you collect him? Because I collect what I love. I love the Pistons and I enjoy collecting Andre Drummond cards and chasing rainbows and doing things of that nature. But if you're gonna invest big money into players today who are like that all-star level, they're gonna command a premium while they are playing, and they do. I think most people would like to know that in the future, they're still gonna hold some kind of that value. Unless you're just independently wealthy or don't care about money at all, in a case in the future where you may have to sell your cards or you're gonna be gone and somebody in your family or a friend is gonna be inheriting that collection and you might like them to sell it for something, you'd probably want to know that the $2,000 you're gonna spend on Bradley Beal's PSA 10 Prism Silver today isn't gonna be worth $150 or $200 or less some point in the future. That's what we're trying to get to here. It's more about awareness. It's about understanding the dynamics of the market and not setting yourself up for a bad expectation down the line in the future. And honestly, I had a number of people approach our booth while we were at the National trying to say, what are my cards worth? And pulling things, bringing things there, binders full of cards and things like that. And some of them being disappointed when they found out, wait, you mean my Alonzo Mourning rookies, even my Shaq cards from the 90s that were expensive and I thought would be worth millions someday are not? That can be a hard conversation to have. So this is more about awareness and kind of trying to predict what's gonna happen in the future. All right, so what do you think Klay Thompson and Bradley Beal's legacies will be long-term? Are these guys who will make the Hall of Fame? And what do you think will happen to their prices? Also, do you collect any players today, any All-Stars or All-NBA type players who compare strongly to players from the 90s or another era? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic down in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and make sure that you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so that you know whenever we're gonna have a new video. Until next time, happy investing.